And I've got a really fun case for you. You ready for this one?
I'm ready.
Awesome. So our case today is a Deloitte case. Okay. And it's specifically for Deloitte's human capital practice. So, usually we're going to use a traditional structure for a lot of other cases, but this one might not fit into that. So just FYI. Okay. And also because it's a Deloitte case, just very conversational, right? Yeah. So show me the way that you're thinking as well as what you're thinking about. So if you're ready, we'll dive in.
Let's do it.
Okay, awesome. Our client today is Black Cats FC, a professional soccer club from Northeast England. The club, whose history dates to the late 1880s, has a rich history of achievements in the English and European tournaments. However, the club is currently playing in the English League 3, the third highest division after 2 consecutive relegations from English Premier League and English Championship, which are the highest and the second highest English leagues, respectively. Did you catch all that?
Yes.
At the beginning of June 2020, the company was sold to an American owner based in Miami. The owner seeks to restore the club's status as an English Premier League club. After 1/3 of a season, beginning of December, the club is in second place and in line to be promoted back to the championship next year. Nonetheless, in a recent anonymous survey about work satisfaction among back office employees, over 80% of employees claimed that they were unmotivated, with 50% of them claiming that if not for COVID-19, they would have been looking for a new job. The CEO of the club has approached our company for help in approaching this problem. Where would you start?
Great. So just to make sure I heard all that correctly, and that was a pretty long prompt. So Black Cats FC, a football team in the northeast of England, is our client today. And though they have a rich history and they've done very well in the past, they actually just got relegated twice, which is really unfortunate. And about a few years ago, in June 2020, they were sold to an American who you said in Miami, I think.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and does he have prior experience in football? Or
he or she?
He or she, yeah. Do they have prior experience in football?
I actually don't know that it's going to end up being relevant, but they do in football, but not in football. Okay,
this sounds like an excellent idea for a TV show.
Yes, it does. So they have experience in American football, but not in Premier League or any kind of European football. Mm-hmm.
But it seems like they're doing well. They're in second place. Mm-hmm. They're ready for a promotion. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But a recent study said that 80% of employees were unmotivated, and of that 80%, 50% would actually have gone out looking for a new job had it not been for COVID.
Exactly.
Okay. So yeah, really interesting case here. I'm excited to jump into this. I feel like I'm getting a little bit back to England here. A quick question with that. In terms of these surveys, is that across the board? That's every single employee?
Yeah, so it's just the back office employees. So if they're working,
so not the football players.
Correct. Not football players, and not, for example, like ground staff or people that are
people who are in the office.
Those that are working in the stadium, those are not included. Okay. Just back office.
Yeah. And do you know, in terms of the actual league itself, I don't think this will be too relevant, but I'm just curious, are they very close to the end of the league? I'm wondering if they're all unmotivated, but they're almost at a promotion. Maybe it's early in the season, or it would be interesting to see if there's other areas.
Yeah, great. So let's put the timing of this where they're fairly confident that they're going to make it. So close to the end of the league season.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, do you mind if
actually let me just go back to this. Oh no, after 1/3 of the season.
A third of
the club is in second place. So there is still actually time for them to mess it up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, fingers crossed they don't, but I'm excited to jump in and figure out maybe ways to at least motivate the staff.
Good. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you mind if I just take a minute or two to organize my thoughts? Great. Okay. So let me just walk you through what I'm thinking here.
Great.
The main issue at hand is the lack of motivation. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a few reasons that can be caused. The number one reason, unfortunately, I think is often fiscal. I think there's probably some information there in terms of people's salaries, bonuses, benefits, any other compensation for the work that's being done by back office. Obviously, they're not out playing on the field, and so they do feel the need still to be rewarded. And that actually ties me into my second point, which is the job nature. So a big thing is that it might just not be fulfilling enough. And the work that they do, they might feel like they're either not making a difference or that it's not important. The work could also be too hard or too stressful. So all three of those would be really interesting to see. Maybe some other employee surveys, if we have them, getting a little bit more detailed whether it be focus groups or employee interviews. And lastly, I'd like to look at the actual environment of the office. Maybe the culture is interesting. I know if some Americans come in and bought the club, there might be a lot of dissonance between people who support that idea and people who don't, and there could be a bit of conflict there, and maybe a bad culture resulting from that. And also, it would be interesting to look at the hierarchy of the organization. Is it just this American comes in and just calls all the shots and tells everyone what to do, or is it a much more democratic kind of layout of the company?
Fantastic. Okay, where do you want to start?
Let's start with financial.
Okay, awesome. What do you think could be some of the issues with financial dissonance in the organization?
Yeah, so obviously everyone wants to make as much money as possible. You know, no one wants to take a pay cut, or no one wants to get paid under, you know, a certain wage. But I think that there could be a connection maybe between what people think they deserve to be paid versus what they're actually being paid, whether they're comparing that to other football clubs or whether they're comparing that to just the rest of the population.
Okay.
I think in addition, looking at bonuses, maybe if bonuses are going straight to the management and none to the back office, or all to the players and none to the back office, there could be some anger or resentment there. And lastly, just in terms of benefits. So are people getting the benefits they want? Do they get the healthcare? Do they get all these other little things that kind of tie in and maybe put the bow on the box?
Okay. Can you think of any other things on the fiscal side that could be tied to, like, for example, we've just gone through a kind of a crazy season for football with COVID-19. And I know that there is an employee survey that we'll look at in just a minute that includes some of the factors from that. But is there any tie between fiscal and COVID-19, or do you see those as separate issues?
They may have either had some recent layoffs, and that could be something, or to save everyone's salary, or maybe everyone took pay cuts, or maybe actually some people took pay cuts and some people got pay rises, and that could be really harmful to the culture of the office. And that actually is a really good point. I forgot to include that in here, but in terms of COVID-19 itself, that could have been really interesting towards the motivation, in that maybe they were way too hard on COVID and no one was allowed to come to work, or only one person in each room, or maybe they were way too lax and no one was wearing masks and people were upset with that. But either way, it's a very difficult line to walk. And I know that the pandemic was stressful for everyone, but that could have been something that maybe impacted employees' sentiment of the office.
One of the things that I thought was interesting in our background when I was presenting it is that it said that if not for COVID-19, many of them would have left.
Yeah.
What do you think that means?
Well, initially I would have thought that during COVID-19, not many people are hiring, because obviously every business is struggling, especially in industries like food and leisure. And so maybe the job market is just really difficult. And so people can't really go out and do that. And also maybe COVID made it a little bit easier. Maybe they were working from home. We've all done remote work at this point, and it is a little bit easier than going into the office. And so maybe there's some connection there. But I think that was interesting that if it was not for COVID, that 50% of those 80% of employees who are not happy would have just gone and left.
After doing some further analysis on the survey, we've realized that employees are generally highly satisfied with the COVID-19 measures that have been implemented, including the option for 100% remote work. So I think you're right on the head for that one. However, most junior level employees on average ranked the following aspects lowly. Okay. Number one, the team's general manager, so the person who's in charge of the football team's operations, sends direct requests to some employees, which sometimes overlap and contradict requests they receive from their direct managers. The second is resentment toward the latest across-the-board budget cuts.
Okay.
And the third is the lack of professional good faith that's reflected by longer de facto working days since the remote working policy was introduced. The question is just, how should they address these problems?
I just want to make sure, by longer de facto working days, is that basically saying, oh, you're only going to work 9 to 5, but you're expected to work till 8 p.m. or the days are getting stretched out? Is that what that means?
Yes, it basically means that, instead of commuting, you can now work those hours.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so between the commute and just the boundaries of work being blended, because it's no longer when I'm not at work, I'm not working. Yeah. Just some of the challenges on the ground.
Yeah, I think we've all experienced that, and that's not fun at all.
Mhm.
Just one more clarification. The team GM is not the American. He's the owner. The GM is an individual.
Exactly. So
Okay,
the GM
good
is
to know.
on site managing the organization.
Okay.
Different than the coach who's managing the players.
Yes.
The GM is kind of in charge of the full operation.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'll address these one by one, and I'll try and keep it pretty conversational here. The team GM sending direct requests, which contradict with maybe other things that have been said. I think that that's sadly all too common in a lot of workplaces, and I think that can really lead to a bad culture.
Mhm.
Honestly, more so potentially than even budget cuts and other things, because I can only imagine doing your work and what you think you need to be doing, and then being told to do the opposite has to put both the employee in a really bad situation, as well as potentially lead to consequences from the person who originally gave their orders. And so I think having some sort of, if we're talking about how to solve this, I think having some sort of communication channel and expectations of, okay, just so you know, here's exactly what they've been told, and here's what you can say, and just making sure that they're almost messy in terms of how they can actually give requests and orders. That when done properly, I think would be really helpful, but you'd also have some risks there in terms of making sure that you're not making everything too convoluted and bureaucratic.
Yes, absolutely. Anything else?
Yeah, in terms of the budget cuts, I think that's just, it seems simple right now, and hopefully we have some information on that, but I'm imagining budget cuts mean pay cuts or bonus cuts. And I would imagine it's probably not fairly distributed, or at least it's not viewed that way by whoever's getting higher or more frequent budget cuts. Okay. And then lastly, in terms of the working days, that's really tough because that could actually come from issue number one of the team's GM sending those direct requests. And so just making sure that if those two are linked, we can hopefully avoid that by just having HR, maybe partner with HR and just making these actually something that people are following of, you don't have to work before 8 a.m. and you don't have to work on this. And like, please turn off your laptops at 6. I know some countries like France as well, where it's if you work after a certain period of time, the actual company will get fined. Or if you work over a certain amount of hours. And that'd be really interesting just to really make it, turn your laptop off at 6, spend time with the kids, being understanding in this time of tension, right, during COVID and all that.
Awesome. Which one do you think is the one that we should explore first?
I think budget cuts is probably the easiest to get a number on and easiest to quantify. And then after that, I'd want to go into the team's general manager issue if we had time.
Okay, awesome. So I actually have some data on budget cuts, and I'm going to give you some detail here. It's an exhibit. Okay. The median salary in the UK is £38,000. Okay. And then the details of our specific employee categories. Obviously, these are kind of averages. There will be a range around this, but these are the averages in each one of these areas is included here. And so as we've already talked about, these budget cuts were proposed. So this percentage cut is including the actual proposed percentage. But of course, interested if you got some insights there. And so what I want to do specifically with this is calculate our expected savings for 2 years with these planned budget cuts and provide some insights about the numbers. And just some context, right? The salary cuts were a part of a 3-stage plan to alleviate the final burden of the financial pressure that was instituted during COVID-19 because no fans were allowed in the stadium for over a year. So gate revenue and merchandise revenue were non-existent during that period, but also have fallen significantly since then and have required cost reduction protocols. And so, of course, we've been able to handle some of that with some of our issues that for those direct client-facing folks, but this back office is an issue. The goal is to recoup at least £2 million from the back office.
2 million.
Yep, including administrative, media, and commercial divisions. So all of these are reflected in those 3 divisions.
So just from this table alone, we want to save $2 million.
That's
just from these budget cuts.
Yep.
Okay, great.
And so the salary cuts were carried out specifically, right? A cut of 15% for junior and senior employees, a 20% cut for senior managers and executives, and a 33% cut for the CEO.
Yeah.
And then after 2 years, everyone's salary would return to the pre-COVID rate.
So as it is right here in this column.
That's correct. However, the condition would be that they would have to return to the office.
Yes.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So just walk me through kind of how you would think about this exhibit, these numbers, and some other options potentially that they may have if you wanted to revisit this.
Yeah, so I mean, even just before you go into math, one thing that's quite nice now is everyone's making over the median salary. So they're treating the employees well. 40,000 is pretty close, so maybe I'll drop them under. We'll see. But I'm also noticing that the budget cuts are actually more severe for salaries as you get higher up, which makes me a little confused. That I would assume most of the pushback is not coming from the CEO or the managers. It's probably from senior and maybe junior employees.
Actually, all of the surveys were from the more junior employees.
Okay, which is interesting because I don't know if they know the full picture, but they're actually almost getting off better than everyone else. But there's obviously more of them.
Correct. So yeah, senior and junior employees were part of the survey. Managers and CEOs were not.
Okay. So in terms of the math I'd want to do to figure out how much we're saving, it's relatively simple here. Hang on, I just wanted to make sure this is over 1 year or 2 years?
2 years.
Over 2 years.
They're going to cut. They're expecting that a full return to office will be possible after after 2 years of the budget cuts. So the budget cuts are planning to be instituted kind of, before COVID is completed. But let's assume that they're kind of projecting out about 2 years. Yeah.
So yeah, I would just multiply the annual salary by the number of employees to find out how much money we're spending in that role. So CEO would just be 1 and vice versa, and as we continue. And then multiply that by the percentage cut to find out the amount of money that we are cutting, add up those 4, and then that's my money saved.
Great. Let's go for it.
Okay, let's start off at the top with CEO. So 700,000 multiplied by 1 multiplied by 2 years is actually $1.4 million. And we know that we're going to save 33% of that. So
and these are in pounds. You can do this in pounds.
Oh yeah, sorry. And these are in pounds. And so we know we're going to save 33% of that. So that's 140,000 would be 10%. Multiplied by 3 is 320,000 pounds. And then add on 10% of that for the 3%, which would be 32. So 352,000 pounds.
Okay.
In terms of our managers, we have £90,000 pounds for salary. Multiplied by 10 is 900,000. And we know that we're saving, and we're doing that over 2 years. I got to keep remembering to do that. That's 1.8 million. And we're going to save 20% on this. So that's pretty easy. 180,000 is 10%. So 360,000 is our 20% savings. And I'm just going to box these so I can remember to add them up at the end. In terms of our senior employees, we have £70,000 a year multiplied by our 30 employees, which is 2.1 million. And we're going to multiply that by 2 for the 2 years. So that's 4.2 million. And we know that we're saving 15%. So 10% would be 420,000. 5% would be 210,000. Add those up together for 630,000. And lastly, we've got our junior employees making £40,000 a year. Multiplied by the 90 is 3.6 million. Multiplied by 2 is 7.2 million. And then we're saving 15% there. So 10% being 720,000. And then 5% being, 5% of 700 would be 350. And 5% of the 20,000 would be, let me just make sure I'm doing the right number there. 720,000 is 10%. So 5% is 350 plus 5%. Sorry, I've just had a complete brain fog there. 10% of 7.2 million is 720,000.
Okay.
And then 5% is half that number. Half of 720,000 is the 350,000 plus the 10,000, 360,000. And that is the 5%. So plus that onto the 10% for a total of 1.08 million, or no?
Here you go.
Yeah, 1.08 million. And then add those all up together. We have...
Before you do that, check your first number. I just want to make sure that you've got all the right numbers here.
Yeah. So 700,000 multiplied by 33%, and then it's also over 2 years. So 1.4 million, the 10% of that would be 140,000 multiplied by 3. 10 times 3 is 30. 4 times 3 is 12. Oh, I've dropped a number there. So that'd be 452. All right, it wouldn't. Sorry, let me just recalculate that. We have a 420,000, and then we know that we're adding in 10% of that for the 3%, which is 42,000. It's going to be 462,000. Thank you for calling that out there. 462,000. Okay, and so if we add these all up, we have 360,000 plus 462,000 plus 630,000 plus 1.08 million, and that's going to give us going to save about 2.43 million, which is actually more than our goal needs by approximately 25%, almost just under 25%. So we're actually, if we only wanted to save 2 million, we could go ahead and give it a little bit of money back.
Where would you change it?
That's a tough question. Junior and senior employees are the ones who are really upset. Now, not to say that managers and CEO are not upset. However, that's 11 people compared to 120 people. That's less than 10% of what junior and senior employees represent. So I think putting it back to junior and senior employees, I'm happy to calculate how much we could actually give them back. If you were
Let's start with junior employees. What would you actually, what would be, where would you start there?
So right now, if they're taking a 15% pay cut, 15% of 40,000, 10% being 4,000, 2,000, they're actually losing $6,000, which takes them down to $34,000 or pounds, per year. The issue with that is it's actually they're now under the median salary. So bringing them back, if we could bring them back up to at least the median salary, that would be nice.
Okay. Where does that bring us in terms of the 2.5?
Yeah. So if we were to, we would have to give all 90 employees an additional $4,000. So 4,000 multiplied by 90. And again, that's also over 2 years. So we can just do the 4,000 by 90 is 4,000 by 9 would be 36,000, so 360,000. And multiply that by 2 is 720,000. And so that's actually going to go ahead and put us back under our, in terms of the amount of money we want to save.
Does that sound right, though?
It doesn't, because I'm looking at the calculation we did before, and so I just want to make sure that maybe I've done something wrong there. So let's look. We've got the 15% is what we were previously saving, but let's go back to 15% of. I just want to run through all my calculations to see where I kind of messed up there. 10% of 40,000, 4,000. 5% is 2,000. That's 6,000. They would be getting 34,000. So we need to add 4,000. So the 4,000 multiplied by
what was the total amount that we saved in that segment before?
1.08 million.
Okay, so just check that number.
The 1.08 or the
1.08 and the 720. Do those seem reasonable in light of the changes that we're making here?
I mean, instead of cutting them 15%, we're cutting them by 5%. So is that about 3/4 of that? Yeah, that's about right to me. It looks about right.
It is, but now we're under. What do we do?
So there's a few ways we can look at that. We can either try and recoup that money elsewhere, make cuts. Would you mind? I know you mentioned before. I didn't get a chance to write down. It was part of a 3-stage process. This is one of them. What were the other 2?
Yep. Let me go back to my notes there.
Because I'm wondering if there's areas in there that we can go ahead and save some money.
Absolutely. Right. There were 3 issues that they faced, and we kind of looked through these. So the 3 stages was to recoup the $2 million from the back office and the administrative, media, and commercial divisions.
Administrative, media, and commercial.
That's correct. Yep. And so this though includes all three of those divisions.
Okay, so this is pretty much in its entirety.
So the salary cuts were just a part of the 3-stage plan. It was one of the ways that they were trying to save money. They did it in other ways as well.
I'm not extremely experienced in the football industry, so this might be crazy to say, but those football players who are earning hundreds of thousands of pounds a week could perhaps take a tiny cut and it would fund most of this. So that's probably one way we could look.
Great.
That might then cause issue with the actual team. And then all of a sudden we might not be able to win because their motivation's low. So it is something we have to be careful with. There's a lot of risks associated with that. There are also other ways in terms of if we could maybe almost, I know this is looking at costs here, but if we wanted to actually look at the profitability, we could almost have some sort of new revenue initiative, whether it's trying to really sell merch over COVID or offering some sort of like Zoom way to get involved and be a part of the team. That's a way that they could generate revenue. But I know we want to focus on costs here, and so I would look into the football player's salary, but I know it's probably a little bit.
Give me one other idea.
Another idea is maybe redistributing the pay cuts. So the CEO could take a higher cut, or some of the senior employees could maybe, because right now we're just looking at the junior employees and that's taking us under. I don't know if we could justify cutting the senior employees more, but the managers and CEO, there's a little bit of money there that we can save. I don't know if it would be enough. I'm happy to calculate it out if you want.
Okay, that's all right. I think at this point we've taken enough time to talk through everything. Yeah. Why don't you walk me through your final recommendation?
Yeah, well, I recommend that we do go ahead and go through with these employee salary cuts. However, I want to caveat that and say I'm not set on this. I would want to change it around a little bit, explore these other avenues if we have more time, to go ahead and make it a little bit more tailored to help the junior employees and senior employees be more involved and be happier, because they are the future of the company, and turnover is a very expensive thing to deal with. And especially in this point in time, we don't want to be facing turnover and having employees quit. In terms of the next steps with that, I think just like a meeting with maybe the CFO or someone in the accounting department, just to really go through all these numbers, look for any other places that we could perhaps shift some numbers and make it a little bit easier to find this budget of saving $2 million. Again, risk with that is we want to keep motivation high, but at the end of the day, this is a financial operation, and we need to make sure that we're not going to go under.
Awesome. So let me talk through some quick feedback. Overall, really good job. I mean, this case has a lot of numbers for a human capital case, but some of the creativity aspects and the fact that neither you or I are experts in professional sports or football was kind of a fun part of it, wouldn't you say? Look, at the beginning, I really thought your structure was exceptional. And I gave you a 4 for both your recap and your clarifying questions. I thought that you did a good job of tying me back to the issue. It felt very conversational. I felt like but overall, I'm kind of making a gut judgment call here. Do you have a good grasp of the problem? I felt like in this case, you really did. I thought that your structure was, I gave it a 4 for content and a 3 for delivery. Okay. And I one of the things that I really liked about it was that I thought that it was very tailored to the case. Like, this was not a, off the shelf framework at all. You did an awesome job of really highlighting it. I actually noticed as you were presenting it that you presented it in a different order than you wrote it down. I actually gave you a bump for that because I thought that was really awesome. But your verbal delivery, I still was looking for you to, on top of everything else, just to say, I have 3 categories there. Boom, boom, and boom. So really, and in the first category, just very clear. And I was imagining us not sitting across the table where I can see how many bullet points you have, but maybe being on Zoom where somebody couldn't see it, and just wanting to really make sure that you're integrating that into your process. For the case creative question, I felt like you did a good job of kind of, writing down some of your ideas there. You asked me for the feedback, but then you didn't, as you were brainstorming, you didn't write them down. So maybe just really, pushing yourself to keep the structure going there. Cause I think it was appropriate for this case, but again, I don't want you to get into bad habits. Yeah. Look, I think that you could have gone maybe even a little further outside the box on some of the solutions here. I really liked the reduction in cuts for the junior employees, but for example, what if we had a steep reduction in cuts like this one for employees who want to remain remote? And then we have a lower reduction for employees who are willing to come back into the office. We already know that their remote is something that they value and that they prize. Is there a way that we could actually tie a financial incentive to it? So, there were some things that weren't even in the case guidance that I had, but as we were talking, I was thinking, I felt like we could have been a little bit more robust on some of the creativity around the insights for the math. So I give you a 3 for the math. I was really working to try to find that math mistake. It was easy to make. And so I knew based on the answer key that it was wrong, but I had to go back and I even put the calculations on my paper myself. So I was like, maybe he's right. Maybe the answer is wrong, but it turned out that was an issue and a question. So just really making sure that as you're walking through it and you're doing the verbal piece, that you're just kind of double checking those. But the main reason wasn't the calculation flaw, because you did so many other calculations well. I wasn't concerned about your ability to calculate. It was just the insight piece that I would have liked to have seen there. Your final recommendation was really good. Tied back to the issue, talked about some of the things that we saw, and then talked about next steps. So overall, I thought that was a really good, strong finish.
Great.
Well done.
Thank you.